Yeah, so we do a few different things. So we basically help dealers and OEMs maximize their retention by training them on sales leadership and how to control the customer journey. And that's something that's kind of a lost art that we only see a small percentage of dealers doing. I mean, retention is the key. I mean, the worst thing that can happen to a dealer or brand is that you don't stay in touch with them, and one day the customer wakes up and decides, hey, you know what? It's new car day. Right? Because then all of a sudden you don't know that the customer's woken up and said new car day. So now they may be thinking, I might try a different brand. I might try a different dealer. If you're lucky to have stayed in touch with them, they may give you another shot at their next purchase. So what we do is we help the dealers and the OEMs control their customer journey. The most important asset that a dealer has is their databases, as we all know. And many dealers and OEMs, they spend a lot of money advertising to the general public in the hopes that a customer will come in. And that's a very expensive form of communication, whereas a least expensive form of communication and the easiest way to convert is your existing database. And when I talk about that, I'm not talking about sending an email or a text blast to your entire database, once a week, once a month, twice a month in hopes that a customer comes in. This is more about direct personal contact from the dealership or the OEM.
Steve, what do you see as the biggest challenges and problems for dealers, and how do you solve those problems for them?
Yeah, so some of the problems that we solve, I mean, it's a few things first. So what we do is, we specialize in sales and leadership training for the management teams, and what we try and do is we try and create an appointment-driven culture. All right, so that's the main thing. That's the basis of the leadership training that we do for the managers. And then we tack on other things that we do as well, such as service department prospecting, daily one-on-ones, how to run those effectively, and how to prevent database and digital leakage, just to name a few. And then the other one that I already talked about a lot is our core, and that's the actual customer retention in action, or the event that we run. Right. So the way it works is we run a day of training, an appointment setting campaign, and it's followed by a sale event where we put that training to work, right? So we've all been to those training sessions where, it sounds great. You're taking the notes, you're great. You're engaged for the day. You come back to the dealership. The workbook sits on the desk. It collects dust. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, it's still sitting there. What we do is we do the training and then we put it into action. So we create that muscle memory. So what we do is, after we do the training, we run a campaign. The campaigns can last anywhere from 3 days to a week. We've also got proprietary in-house information or technology that we apply, which identifies customers most likely to buy. So we take a dealer's database and we score the customers on there from 1 to 100 based on many factors, such as the age of the car, the distance to the dealership, warranty situation, with the brands that we work with, are they in that sweet spot that we see them trading in and customers coming in and buying a new car, as well as other factors. So this allows us to also model a dealer's database health, which some dealers engage us on. And then also we can value a dealer's database as well based on the future sales that we see.
So, Steve, how do you what's the process to conduct an event? So if you walk us through, you mentioned about the invitations, etc. So where do you actually start? If you're from A to Z, what is the process with an event?
Yeah, so it'll start probably about, it depends on the dealer or the OEM or the dealer group, but we will start probably about a week and a half out, where we'll drop mailers into to the event, into the mail to our targeted customers. And again, it's targeted customers. We don't blast the database or burn out the database. And then from there, the week before the event, we'll send an e-blast or an EDM to the selected customers. And that EDM, actually, if a customer clicks on it, again, using our technology that we created in-house, it'll go to a personalized landing page. So if you get one of our invites, Mark, and you click on that website, it'll say, "Welcome, Mark." And it'll explain what's going on. A customer will be able to set up an appointment. That consumer portal is what we call it. And then where a customer can actually start the appraisal process of his trade. So they're able to actually go in. It'll automatically default to the customer's trade because we have that information from the database. And they'll be able to put in information about their trade. So how many kilometers it's got. It'll have, you'll be able to upload photos. You'll be able to upload comments about the car. So basically, we call it the "What's My Vehicle Worth" portion of the portal. So they can upload all that stuff. And then before a customer even comes into the dealership for their appointment, we actually can get the dealership to start appraising the trade. And we all know the situation right now with the used cars. It's in very hot demand right now. So, a dealer can know what they're dealing with as far as what kind of a trade the customer has coming in. And they don't have to trade the customer. They're actually currently driving, if they want to come in and trade their partner's car, or if they've had a lifestyle change where they don't need another car and they just want to have the vehicle brought in and they want to sell it to the dealership, they can change all these default settings. And then once they, click enter, that automatically sends all the information to the dealership. It also, on that consumer portal, will explain any specific offers that are being made on the day. So now you've got two touch points that I just talked about. You have the mailer, the EDM, the consumer, which includes the consumer portal. And then the week of the sale, what happens is there's a touch point that's sent out, which is an SMS message that goes out as a reminder. And then the final touch point is after we train the sales execs on how to make the phone calls for customer retention, they will then receive a phone call. So now they've had all these different touch points, and really they must think something really special is going on, which it is. It's a private sale event. It's not for the public. It's specifically for this dealer's database and to make the customer feel good about them being a special customer of the dealership.
That's amazing, Steve, because I just think of, and John and I have spoken of this many times, the challenge around cold calls. So by the time that call is made, that prospect is super warm and super engaged. Right. So there really should be no reason to be scared of these calls.
Yeah. And we know when a customer is engaged in it as well. So we have all that data that feeds back, especially if they've clicked through or they responded to one of our SMSs. And when we go in and we do the event, we consider those warm leads, and we train the sales execs, again, a separate piece of retention on how to handle those customers that have engaged with us before we even start making the calls.
So Steve, you come in a week and a half before the event, so you get your first view of the database. Is there any particular size of database or quality? Do you have any, or does it really matter before you start the event?
Yeah, well, when we're talking with the dealer, if a dealer is interested in an event and wants to engage us, we're talking to him about it. We're very flexible. So we do start all these things before the actual event, but the event campaign of actually the trainer being on site, which is where it really starts to ramp up, that'll start 2 days before a sale. So we'll do training in the morning of the first day, and then we'll do a phone blitz, and then our trainers that are on site there will actually coach the sales execs over the next day and a half. And then the event will happen for 2 days. Now, when we're looking at the size of a database required, we work with all different sizes and all different brands with their databases. So what we need predominantly is we need about 150 to 200 customers or contactable customers on that list, right? I mean, we've run events for super luxury OEMs and dealers and distributors here throughout the region where they have less. They've had less than 100 actually in their database. But strategically, what we do is we also can help them with a strategy and a run-up to that campaign where they can do a lead generation campaign. And we have the ability to do that as well. And what that does then is that increases the number of contact targets that we have.
And Steve, your time in OEM land, and also now with what you're seeing with Absolute Results, what offers work best to get the customers into the showroom? And I'll throw one out for you now: 3 years free servicing or something like that. What offer works, or what do you see are the offers that get the most traction?
Yeah, that's kind of, you're asking me for the silver bullet question, and really that depends on the brand and the situation of the brand and the actual customers that you're looking to talk to. But there's a difference between conquesting and a retention offer strategy. And obviously we specialize in the retention. It's the least expensive way to do it. Personally, I like offers that make customers feel special and drive value. And what we see works well with some of our events here are accessory offers, extended warranties for peace of mind, and a really big one is loyalty bonus cash, and that's one that really makes the customers feel special because, hey, you're not offering that out to the general public. It's because I'm a loyal customer. You're rewarding me. So that one works really well in the current environment that we're in also. But in this environment, what we're also seeing that's working well is anything that'll lower payments also. So financing, I'll use as an example. Unfortunately, here in Australia, we can't collect the finance data in the database. In other markets where we can do that, such as North America, I mean, we know exactly where the customer's payments are. And when we're having the discussions with the customer, we can tell them based on the manufacturer incentives exactly how much we can lower their payments by.
Steve, you mentioned that at the moment used cars are pretty hot and a very important part of the deal. And you also mentioned the profitability of the whole deal, taking into account not only the front end gross on the new vehicle, but taking into account the money they make on the used car and other parts of the business. How important is used cars, and does it always play a big factor in some of your programs?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, John, it's very important. With some of the clients that we work with, it's the single most important thing that we do, because we're very targeted with the database that we go after. And if a client wants to go after a vehicle their customer database that we know that the customers are driving a specific vehicle, we can do that. We can tailor the event towards it. But one of the biggest things our newer clients don't realize is the knock-on effect from running our events. I mean, these are loyal customers. So generally, for starters, the grosses are higher. But aside from the front-end gross, taking into account what you said, the used cars, the trade-ins. So we know the situation currently where the used car market is absolutely on fire here, and the inventory is very, very tight. But then there's also the F&I that the dealers make. There's the profit on the aftercare gross that they make. And then if a manufacturer out there has volume bonuses, there's a volume bonus program running, you throw all that in. Now, all of a sudden, these events are very lucrative for them. I'll give you an example of a mainstream Japanese dealer that we ran, our Japanese brand that we ran in New South Wales. This dealer closed at 75% of the customers that came in, they sold. And they ended up grossing $80,000 in that event, in a 4-day event. So think about that, $80,000 in a 4-day event. I mean, now, again, this was a very motivated team. And that included turning 12 of the 20 trades they took in within 3 days after the event. Yeah, it really is an investment. And the dealers that see the full picture, I mean, these are our regular clients. I mean, these are the guys that are running events with us 3 and 4 times a year.
Oh, and you can see why it makes sense for them. And now, Steve, we know dealers run their own events, and obviously there's absolute result events. Where do you see the big difference between the two? Why should a dealer not just do their own event, and why should they use absolute results? What's the difference?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say a dealer shouldn't run his own event. What I'd say is that they're very different. So a lot of the dealers' definitions of running an event means sending out a massive e-blast to the database and text messages and hoping customers show up. And as you know, Mark, from our previous relationship, hope is not a strategy, right? But most dealer-run events, they aren't as structured as what we do, and we don't burn out databases. We're very surgical in what we do, including the technology that we use to identify customers with the highest propensity to buy. This is, as I said earlier, this is proprietary technology that we created in-house that, the typical dealer wouldn't have. And our trainers they're also there to drive the discipline in the dealership. We know exactly how many appointments we need by the hour. It's like a cricket score. You've got the worm, you know the run rate, and we know how many appointments we need by hour to understand if the event is going to be good, great, or awesome. And, we know by the end of the second day exactly how the dealership is going to fare at the actual event on sale day without even opening the doors or taking the first registration, just based on the number of appointments that we've taken.
So, Steve, you've spoken a lot of the build up to the event and having the appointments and that, but what are the key elements to the event? What makes it really successful?
Well, really, there's two. The biggest key element, and this is the most important one, is an engaged and motivated management and sales team. If you have those, the event will be successful because our trainers will be in there. They'll be in the trenches. They'll give them the tools that they need to really turn out a great event. And we also need a team that's willing to maybe step out of their comfort zone if they're not used to making calls to their customers or their databases. And then the other final thing that we need is we need some form of a database or contactable customers that we can reach out to. We have had many dealers say they've tried to replicate it and they should be able to do it, but they said they can't because of what we bring to the table. And they end up coming back to us. In fact, when I was in OEM land, when I was in the UK, I had a dealer that actually said, look, I'm going to do my own event. And this was, we had all the dealers on board and we had one outlier said, no, I'm not going to pay for it. I'm going to do my own event. And I made a little side bet with him. And I said, you run your event. Then I want you to run it was actually Absolute Results because I was using them back then when I was in OEM land and manufacturer land. And I said, you used Absolute Results and let's compare the events. I said, if you outperform the Absolute Results event, I will pay 100% of the event. And guess what? We sold 3 times the amount of cars, or that dealer sold 3 times the amount of cars running the absolute results event. And this is after the dealer's database got burnt out, because what they did was they did their event first and they sent the traditional blast at everybody with the e-blast, with all the text, with everything else. They sold a certain amount of cars, and then we came in surgically, or absolute results came in surgically, and they sold 3 times the amount of cars. And the dealer came to me and said, you know what? You were right.
Now, Steve, I'm keen to get an understanding. You're a numbers guy. I'm a numbers guy. We love ratios and results, and it's in the name of the business. So what results can dealers expect from an event as far as sales numbers and conversion ratio?
But as far as conversion, like I said, it's science. If we're running an event and we have 4 sales execs, so it's all dependent on how many sales execs and how many people are making the calls. So what we look to do is we look to set 15 appointments per sales exec. So what we do initially is we will give each sales exec 150 names out of their database based on propensity to buy. And of that, we expect each exec to make 15 appointments. And then we know that out of the 15 appointments that sales exec makes, about half will show up. So call it 7 to 8. And of those that show up, we know half will buy. So call it 3 to 4. So in that example, if a dealer ran a sale, they should produce between 12 and 16 sales. 12 on the low side, 16 on the high side. And like I said, it depends on the engagement of the team. But, we've seen dealerships with 4 sales execs. We've seen up to 25 to 30 sales. We ran an event here last month. We had 1 sales exec. He set 10 appointments, and he had all 10 show up and sold 9. I mean, so that's the extreme end of it, but that's where it will happen. But we know how well the sale will go by the end of the second day of the appointment blitz. We know it. I mean, the truth is in the numbers, and the numbers will set you free, and we know it.
Steve, just following on from that conversation, what's fascinating for me, do you think your sale event will just pull sales forward that would have happened anyway? And the second part of that is, do you think your sales event could create a whole lot of sales for the next 2-3 months that maybe wouldn't have happened, but because you had the sale event and all the activity, people then came into the dealership as a result of that? Have you got any view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do not pull sales ahead. I mean, we've got studies that say only 8% of a database is shopping at a given time. So what we do is we try, and like I said earlier, we try and control that customer journey. So if only 8% of the customers are shopping at any given time, and you sold 10 cars in an event, only one of those customers you would have had an opportunity to sell. And then again, it depends on the dealership's retention rate also. So no, we do not pull ahead sales. Absolutely not. And to answer your question about, is there residual? The answer is yes. There is a lot of residual that happens as well, because you could be on the phone to a customer, or a sales exec can be on the phone to a customer. They could say, look, I was thinking about a new car, but now's not the right time. Contact me in 2 or 3 months or 6 months, or family situation's changing here. We've got a baby on the way. We're going to need a larger vehicle. Please call us, when that happens. But you don't know this until you contact your customer base, right? No customer. I haven't heard of any customers that are, if the family gets pregnant, they pick up the phone and they say, hey, Mr. Dealer, just want to let you know I'm going to be having a baby and I want to buy a car in the next 9 months, right? That probably doesn't happen. You don't know that until you reach out to the customer. But then we also get residual event sales as well, because when we do it, we have a specific sale date. So right now we're doing an event with a luxury brand, and it's a public event, but they want to have a VIP preview night on a Thursday night. So what we do is we try and target all of our appointments for that Thursday. Now, again, that might not fit in for the actual customer, but we're not just going to say to the customer, well, if you can't come in Thursday, too bad. We will then set an appointment for them after the event, so that the dealership can then also, get a shot at talking to the customer at a time that really suits them.
How often should dealers run these events? So you mentioned some of them run a number through the year. Is there a magic number, or is it something that it's a fit for purpose for each dealer, has a different structure? Yeah,
well, that's a great question. And really it depends on the size of the database and number of sales execs that you have. Those are the key factors. Like I said, we don't burn out a database. We only touch 150 customers per existing sales exec that's participating. So using that example, if we have a dealer with 4 sales execs, we're only touching 600 customers per event, right? Now, if a dealer has a database of 8,000 customers, call it, we could technically run 13 events without touching the same customer twice. Now imagine that if we shoot for a week's worth of sales in an event, imagine having 13 additional weeks in a year, what that would mean to a dealership or even an OEM, right? It's massive.
And Steve, a question for me, for a new car launch, are your sales events as effective or more effective, or should a dealer just do his own thing for a new car launch, or could they bring in your services for that type of event?
No, absolutely. For a new car launch, that's where we're probably the most effective, because what we do is we take a look at the existing database that's driving the older model, and this is going out and making a personal contact with a customer that has the existing old model and explaining that, hey, we've got a vehicle. Let's set up an appointment. Let's come in. Let me show it to you. Let me take you for a test drive in it. Whereas, a lot of OEMs and dealers, what they do is, they'll just blast media marketing dollars, millions and millions of dollars out there and in hopes that the right customers see it and come in. Whereas we're very targeted at, breaking down the database saying, hey, you're driving the previous model. We've got a great one. We are giving you a VIP preview to come in and you can be one of the first ones to buy this, right? So come in. We only need 45 minutes to an hour and we'll take you through it. So yeah, it works extremely well. There's a lot of different ways you can model it. New car launches are definitely effective. Loyalty campaigns are definitely very effective as well, because it's all about a private sale. This isn't a public sale. It's a private sale for your existing database or customers or VIP customers that have reached out and raised their hand that they're interested in something. It also helps with demos. If you have a lot of demos out there, we can tailor demo events. Like I said, we can run used car events. I mean, it really depends on what the dealer is looking for. But yes, it works really well, especially when you get the OEM and the dealer in tandem, where the OEM's laying the ground cover with all their marketing they do into the public, because maybe the customer may have heard this, and then all of a sudden they start getting an email from us, then they get a phone call, and then they come in, they actually test drive it, and they see that it's a special event that's happening.
And Steve, I'm keen to ask you a question around the human side, because the events, when you look at the data, it's compelling, that 15 down to 7, down to 3 sales per consultant, a week sales in a day. What behaviors do you need to change in the dealership?
Yeah. So that one, it's pretty simple. It's changing the mindset of throwing a lot of money into the market and hoping people will send leads or show up to the dealership, and focusing on their current customers and the retention, their database. As an example, we try and instill taking down the sales board and putting up an appointment board. When you have a sale, it's already on the board. That's gone. That's history. There used to be an old saying that said, nothing happens till you sell a car. Well, something needs to happen before you sell a car. You need to make an appointment. So now we say, internally here, nothing happens until you make an appointment. And we know that, out of 4 appointments made, 2 will show, 1 will buy. Now, I'm not saying take away from that general marketing activity. It's still needed. But imagine if every sales exec, I know how much you love math, Mark, and I'll take you through it. But if every sales exec made 2 appointments per day in a dealership of 4 sales execs, that's 40 appointments in a 5-day work week. Okay. That should drive 10 additional sales per week or 40 sales per month on top of the general marketing activity. And guess what? All that stuff's free because it exists in your database. The only cost is your cell phone to pick the phone up and call the customer. So we really push the retention aspect of it. For sure, there is a need for the awareness and all that other stuff. But when we run one of our events, it is absolutely measurable. It is measurable on the amount of money that you're going to spend up front at one of our events to exactly what the results are going to be. Where when you're advertising mainstream media, I don't want to say it's a campaign of hope, because there's a need for it to drive new fresh blood into the dealership, but it is not as measurable as far as when you get to the pointy end, the bottom end of that funnel, which are the actual sales that it drove. When you run an event, we can tell you exactly who the customer was, when we called them, when they came in, when they bought, all because of the event that we ran and all because of the retention training that we drove. It takes all the mystery out of it.
So Steve, what are the main barriers and resistance you face internally when you come in to do an event?
The biggest one is getting the sales execs out of their comfort zone, because not a lot of sales execs, and there are some out there, some really good ones out there, stay in touch with their customers pretty well, their customers and clients, but it's getting them out of their comfort zone and showing them that it's easy to pick the phone up and call the customers. In some cases, it should be easier to pick the phone up and talk to one of your existing customers than it is for someone walking through the door, right? Because you've already sold them a vehicle that costs between $20,000 and $200,000, right? So we train the sales execs on how to do that and how to continuously stay in touch with the customer, not to pester them, but to actually be there when they need it. And our trainers, when they go in and they train the sales execs, they're skilled, and that's part of what we do in helping the sales execs reach out to their customers.
And Steve, is there a magic sauce that you have to help those sales consultants overcome that fear of making that call?
Yeah, well, our trainers are right there in the trenches. And then what they will do is they will make the first couple of calls and show the sales execs how easy it is. And they will set the appointment. The first probably half hour to 45 minutes of calls, it's a little bit awkward for the sales execs. But then after that, they just start rolling. They roll, and it's like nothing. I mean, they do it as if it's second nature to them, and that's when you see the momentum gain. And by the second day, you see the momentum in the room when we get everyone in the boardroom making the calls, and appointments are going up on the appointment board. The sales execs love it. And then when you set the appointment, now when the customer's coming in, and you can do research on that customer and understand their wants and needs and have the vehicles ready to go before the customer actually comes in. And that's the same if you're a fleet director or an SME or an individual customer.
Steve, now for the phone calls, do you develop specific scripts and train the sales consultants on how to use those scripts before they make the calls?
Yeah, we don't teach word scripts. We stay away from it. What we do is we train the sales execs on what we call intelligent word tracks. So the sales execs can adapt to the conversation. And the goal is basically to move the customer through 3 phases of the conversation that we teach, and ultimately moving them into phase 3, which is closing the appointment. But word scripts are very rigid, and it doesn't allow you to adapt. The word tracks that we use, that we have specific for each of the 3 phases, they allow the sales exec to adapt to the conversation and become more effective on setting the appointment.
And Steve, what CRM tools work the best? And as far as standardizing the behaviors of the sales consultant?
Yeah, look, it's not magic what we do. It's all about just reaching out to customers and staying in contact with them. I would say whatever CRM tool works the best for the individual that they're comfortable with, to use it. But as long as it has the customer contact details and the history of the customer, that is really the two key ingredients that you need. I mean, appointments can come from anywhere. I mean, it can come from a dealer's database. It can come from a digital lead. It can come from the sales department or others. I mean, such as, referrals or showroom visits that aren't closed. And that's one of the things that we teach in our leadership training as well.
It's the rule number 1 of, and I've got it here, the 7 habits of highly effective people. Rule 1 is to be proactive. And this is where Absolute Results fits the bill for that being proactive. Traditional marketing is you go out and advertise it. Let's hope someone comes in, and hope is that strategy. And you'd like to think you'll get a return on it. But it's that proactive one, proactive step that makes a lot of sense, because you've got the database there. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have any questions or suggestions or requests for future topics, or just after some advice, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. That's to John Sinclair or Mark Palavestra. Subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on LinkedIn, and so that you don't miss any of the weekly shows and dispatches that we publish from time to time.